everybody, I am glad that you have joined me. This is my presentation for the Haptic Narratives event that took place in London in May 2015. So a couple of words about myself. I am a filmmaker and a video producer here in the UK as well as in Estonia, which is where I'm from. I did my first degree and my master's in screen studies at the University of Manchester. I'm carrying out research nearly every day in my practice, and I'm going to undertake a PhD next year. My main research interests have always been with the way in which dominant film, TV and video aesthetics affect people on a very fundamental level in terms of how we perceive ourselves, what we are. So I have a really tricky question to you. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human on a very, very basic level? What are we? And I would like to think that we are living, breathing, organic creatures of the natural world. And if we take everything away, we take the career away, we take work away, we take social positions away, we take money away, all the things, and we're just with ourselves, then this is the way I would like to feel. I don't need to be on the beach for that. I don't need the seaside. This is how I would like to feel inside. So this is a visual illustration of how we could or should feel inside as part of the natural world. However, if we're surrounded by this, then we don't feel like that man on the beach. We feel more like that. I think this emotion is kind of familiar to almost every one of you in the auditorium in this kind of digital age with all the media oversaturation around us. And I'm not going to talk about how media oversaturation is bad for you in general and that you should, do away with screens and go out in the nature and run naked into the lake or something. And this is not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about how this media around us affects us through its aesthetic qualities, and how does it kind of make us recreate ourselves. I have a quote here from Vivian Sobchak. What happens when our expressive technologies also become perceptive technologies, expressing and extending us in ways we never thought possible, radically transforming not merely our comprehension of the world, but also our apprehension of ourselves. Now, this is my main concern, as I said. What if films and TV and video make us perceive ourselves as something else that we are? So let's look at cinema. In cinema, from the start of the movie industry, the average shot length has been decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. And it has reached to being less than 4 seconds. And if we look at the highest grossing films of all time, so these are the films that most people have seen. All the 50 highest grossing films, apart from Titanic, are adventure films and action films that are associated with spectacle and visual excess. So we're getting this really, really fast cutting, as is evident in the average shot length, and we're getting these action and adventure films. These two things are kind of dominant in the cinema. So how does it affect us in terms of how we perceive ourselves, or how do we feel as human beings? Let's look at the embodied spectatorship theory, which is one of the several theories of spectatorship, or how to view films. So in embodied spectatorship, we're not passive viewers, we're active. We're there with our whole body. And what we're getting from the screen, we're not just getting it, we're also reacting to it, and we're kind of transforming ourselves through that process of receiving and reaction. And I have joined together a quote from Susan Rutherford and Laura Marks. During film viewing, one's self, the lived-in body, experiences a relation, a porousness with the objects or images of the world, meaning that a two-way connection is opened up, a mutual creation of self and the other. So it is precisely in this mutual creation where the spectator's sense of his own existence can be altered by what is at the other end, so what is on the screen. And this is worrying if what is on the screen is characterized by inhumane qualities, such as speed and flashiness and visual excess. You know, if we are creating ourselves through those aesthetics, then what do we become? I have a suggestion. Are we becoming machines? This is not a man versus technology debate, because I'm not concerned that, you know, the robots are going to take over the world, but that we are becoming robots. And this is much more worrying. So now let's add to that something slightly different, not as much to do with the pace of films, but the actual visual representation of nature on screen. So dominant representations of nature and natural environments on screen almost always place the civilized man into a binary, and by that I mean oppositional relationship with nature. And there's a quote from Fowler and Helfield, who said, "The most common representation of the rural in the cinema, the landscape, can be said not to take us toward, but rather to take us away from the land." Here's some visual illustrations to explain what I mean by that. Here's a screenshot from Once Upon a Time in the West, which is a Western, and wide shots and panoramic shots are really, really emblematic to Westerns. This is the Western landscape that we all know. Classic Western is man against nature. Go to the Wild West and you take control over the Wild West. Their opposition is projected through the fact that the man is really small in this really, really wide panoramic shot of the natural environment. And then we have epic films of more recent times, like Lord of the Rings, you know, any kind of adventure films where the adventurers go out into the unknown and they travel through these breathtaking landscapes. It's like one man against the world, you know. These are, or in Lord of the Rings, it's kind of 9 men against the world, the Fellowship of the Ring. But if you look at the screenshot of the right bottom corner, then there's the Fellowship of the Ring. Really tiny, tiny figures in this vast landscape again, so they're kind of opposed. And then we have ecological disaster films like The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, and a lot of recent ones, and I'm sure there's more to come. Picture nature as this dangerous, enigmatic force that we have to fight against. And then we have other types of films where men kind of manage to become part of nature, but only when they abandon their everyday self and they become animalistic. So Life of Pi, main character Life of Pi has to kind of become the tiger on the boat in order to survive on the ocean. And there's Liam Neeson in The Grey. In The Grey, Liam Neeson's character and a few other people crash a plane in Alaska, and he has to survive in this wilderness, and it's cold and there's wolves, and he survives because he has this animalistic qualities again. You know, he becomes kind of the uncivilized caveman, and only because of that he's able to be part of this natural environment. I have included a few books here, a few articles you can have a look at. So going back to the question of what does it mean to be human if we consume this type of media that I have been just talking about, the sped up, flashy aesthetics and the opposition of man and nature on screen all the time, then what does it do to us? And I would like to introduce you to Allison Landsberg's theory of prosthetic memory, which insists that film spectators acquire memories of events that actually have not happened to them. Landsberg talks about historical events mainly, but can also have this kind of prosthetic sense memories that we think that we have felt, or that we have felt in a way that we actually have not. And this can affect you to the extent of making you forget about your natural origins and the fundamental connection with nature. I'm not suggesting that we should throw away our TVs out of the window and run into the nature, because this is not a solution. This is not the way our society moves forward. I think rather we have to find solutions within this media that we're consuming. So the question is, can we make a change by offering alternative audiovisual experiences? There has been whole movements offering alternative audiovisual experiences. Slow cinema to start with, and there's a picture of Andrei Tarkovsky with a very dashing looking camera. Then we have recently slow TV, and so slow media in general. This is a direct reaction against the speed and the flashiness and the visual excess. I don't think it works for the masses. I don't think it works for most people. A simple reverse won't do. Everything is fast. Let's make it slower. It's not as simple as that. I think long-term consumers of speed could simply get bored. New York Times film critic Tanquaz has termed slow-paced art films cultural vegetables. We're all being told to eat vegetables. I eat vegetables, but I know a lot of people who don't eat vegetables, and they will never eat vegetables. And the same way, they will never ever enjoy slow cinema. So I'm offering another solution, a different kind of solution, to use haptic visuality to create direct contact with nature through audiovisual media. So it's not that I'm telling you to go and hug a tree, but stay where you are, stay in front of the screen. But we're giving you the tree through this tactile vision. The quote marks, as though one were touching a film with one's eyes. So I want people to touch the tree, but you don't have to go out, you can do it through the screen. And this is what haptic visuality can really do. So I'm going to explain now a bit about how I have approached this possibility of bringing nature to the viewer through the screen with haptic visuality. So I think the most important thing in any kind of haptic visuality process where you want people to feel the touch of something is texture. So if we have textures, natural textures and close-ups, then through that we can kind of evoke the sense of touch. Because through texture, you know what something feels like, whether it's soft or it's harsh, if it's the bark of a tree, it's uneven, you know what it feels like, and this is through textures. So we can create this sensory experience of touching things. And I think very important is not just to show the textures themselves in close-ups, but skin, human contact with that texture. So like fingertips touching something, or snowflakes on cheeks, melting, so you can feel the cold, and I think this is really important. Otherwise, it's kind of looking from the outside, but if you see human contact with the natural texture, then this brings it so close to you. And here's a little clip from my film Beyond Help, which I made completely using these techniques that I'm just explaining right now, and I hope that this film is being screened today. So here's a little clip just to demonstrate the skin and the natural textures in one shot. Also, of course, we can't make the whole film in close-ups, although I kind of try to do it. But you don't always have to have something in close-up to make a haptic or to create a haptic experience with textures, because we can use half-transparent images of textures over the main image of the film. So you can have something in a medium shot, but then you can have like half-transparent image of leaves blowing in the wind and then touching her face or something. So you can still get that sense of touch, and this can be done through layers. So the thing that you lay upon the main image could be close up, but the main image could be a medium shot, the wide shot. And here's another example from my own film how I kind of layered different shots with each other. And another important thing to think about here is the sound of textures. So it really, really helps to create a haptic experience and to communicate textures if we focus on the soundscape, because every texture has a really specific sound to it when you touch it or when you crack it or something. So say you walk on snow, or when you crack something into half, like a branch or something, with dry leaves, when you crack them, or just run your fingers through leaves, or through grass or hay or something. When you can hear that sound, you really get the texture as well, because the sound comes from the material qualities of an object, and texture is the fundamental material quality of any object. Another thing which is really good about close-ups in this context is that they actually make nature more accessible to us, because if we usually have nature in panoramic wide shots, then it's something out there and it's something that requires space. But if you're living in the city in one-bedroom apartment and you go to your office and you're crammed in buses and cars, and you don't have this space, so it becomes like something that is not in your world. It's something that you have to drive out of the city to get to, but it's not true, because nature is everywhere around you, and most importantly within you. So close-ups kind of make nature something more intrinsic to our lives as opposed to panoramic shots. So what I'm trying to say here is that if we are able to recall or create a memory of walking in the grass and touching the bark of the tree and being in close contact with nature through these audiovisual experiences, using haptic visuality and creating even prosthetic memories, then we could alter the spectator's sense of existence from being defined by man-made aspects of life to breathing as one with nature again. So the way we were born, we can go kind of back to that, or we can at least reverse some of the harm done by mainstream cinema, TV and video aesthetics. Thank you.